Hey, everybody. I'm Baron Manette. I'm here today talking with Rob Klopot from the Forest Hill Group. He's a North American leader and expert in residential real estate. We're really excited to welcome Rob to our discussion around cultural capital. Welcome, Rob.
Thanks for having me.
Can you tell and share with our audience who you are, what you do, and why you do it?
Sure. I'm the president and CEO of the Forest Hill Group. My partner and I founded this company 20 years ago, and currently we employ a little over 700 employees. We service and consult on condominium developments across North America, predominantly in the mid to high end of the market. We're very active in terms of consultations with both our condominium communities as property managers and advisors, over 90 communities with another 40 in the development cycle. And it's been an interesting time to kind of be in this space as we've evolved along with the market through this pandemic that we're coming out of.
This is an amazing time as we think about coming out of COVID. And what we're seeing is Canadians' way they think about shopping is changing, way they think about purchasing everything from clothes to cars to real estate, which is why we were so excited to talk to you today. And what are you seeing with your residents and audiences today?
Sure, and it's probably a good question considering that there's probably been a few phases to this evolution. Obviously, the early innings of COVID, there was an immediate retrenchment, right? Things stopped, e-commerce blew up, and people had some time to really reflect on how they use their homes and maybe how they want to use their homes in the future. And there was a quick move to suburbia, right? And I would call that, innings kind of 1 through 3 of the pandemic that we were just coming out of. And I think that was kind of a make sense first reaction. And, we started to kind of see innings through 3 to 6. And that involved kind of reconsidering, I think, the wholesale change to suburbia. Everything froze, but real estate started to come back, and it was one of the first to come back. People probably had more time to kind of look at real estate options, but also reconsider the lifestyle that they wanted to re-enter into, right? Things like having an outdoor space where one may have not existed before. Having high touch point services like perhaps a porter or a concierge in your lobby that would assist in getting you that e-commerce delivery quicker and more effortlessly, into your hands. Having a certain amount of privacy that you can kind of check in and out of because you have that lifestyle at your condo community or your multifamily living community. And we started to see a new trend form. And, it's kind of an exciting time now because we're all coming out of this in North America. We're kind of seeing a follow through of those trends continue.
As you see the intersection of culture, mid to high end audiences changing their needs and real estate, is the idea of real estate now as easily categorized by location, or is the idea of high-end living, is that now more inside the building, as you talked about, more amenities, more services? So does it matter if I'm in Mississauga or downtown Toronto? Does it still matter if I'm in Miami versus Palm Beach?
I mean, to some extent, it's always going to matter. You're going to find different wants and needs of the buyer depending on the location of the product. So I would say, in the shortest answer to the question possible, yes, location's always going to matter. But there's a lot more asterisks to that answer now, right? We're seeing, the word luxury replaced by lifestyle. So where pre-pandemic, I think it was an easier path for developers to deliver generic product, the evolution of the psyche of the buyer is more towards customization. No one wants generic anymore, right? Where we are in this cycle, and I think it's been a one-way ride in the Toronto market, and now we're seeing a renewed enthusiasm to typical tourist markets like Miami, actually all through the east and west coast of South Florida, where you're seeing purchasing behavior and the reasoning behind the purchase a lot more customized. I can give you some examples of Miami. They're doing things like fractional ownership. of condominiums, right? Where they're saying, hey, look, why don't you and two new graduates coming out of school think about your first purchasing decision in terms of splitting this first condo? You know, you're going to be working a lot, you're going to be out a lot. Some of you may be living at your parents', but you want to get into the market and put some real equity behind where you live, right? So we're seeing fractional ownership, something that I don't think we would have seen as little as 3 to 5 years ago now entering the marketplace. You're seeing things like Zoom rooms have a space within the amenity floor of a condominium, TikTok rooms with lighting and recording devices, glass sneaker boxes finding their way to closets. I mean, the development community, I think, is being forced to listen because you're seeing such a loud volume of preference coming from this buyer.
If we believe that COVID's an accelerant for these trends that were happening, are we not seeing the outcome of personalization, custom, it's a custom scarcity in a way. I have the ability now to make my purchase the exact way I want it. And that is going to be the ultimate fusion of culture and capital. I want what I want, that's mine. Are we not entering a level of personalization what comes next?
We definitely are. Preference probably trumps your conventional view of luxury. So where, and this probably boils down to more demographics, where having a front of house service with bellmen and valets may be the preference of a certain consumer. The more personalized preference may be towards a green roof and access to public transit. And saying, well, I never wanted a parking spot, so I don't need to forecast that 65 grand to 90 grand outlay for buying the parking, because I'm going to be using Uber as long as I make those commutes. And when I'm not, I want to have a place to lock up my bike and entertain friends in a cool, tricked out amenity space. That flexibility, it takes two parts. Number one, the consumer to demand it. Number two, for the developer to deliver it. And where I think we've seen quick progress is developers quickly realize that that's what the consumer wants more and more of. And, we see it in real terms where I can tell you there's probably about a dozen projects in Toronto that pre-COVID were planned as generic glass boxes. And, one of the things you read in headlines a lot is, number one, affordability, and number two, lack of good rental product. Well, I could tell you that at least 12 of these products that were once condo are now being rethought and repurposed to be rental. And purpose-built rental is something that probably would have not accelerated nearly as quickly if we didn't have COVID, because there wasn't a footprint available for it, and developers were on a one-way track about developing these generic condos. Well, now there's an appetite for 2 and 3 bedroom units where families maybe want to live in urban centers but don't want to live in houses. So this preference is also spilling over not just into the single unit household, but also the family household. And I think it is a direct result of these accelerating trends.
Based on these shifting preferences, what are the top 3 trends you're seeing on the buyer side?
You've got, I'm going to talk about the urban buyer because we're talking about the young demo. It's unquestionable. They want to live downtown, close to restaurants, close to the action, a really vibrant lifestyle scene, whether that's, surrounded by cafes, outdoor living spaces. They want to be where the action is. And I think when you start kind of going down the funnel and saying, well, what does that mean in terms of your living space? That's outdoor spaces, creative common element and amenities, other choices other than owning a car and having the burden and carrying costs of the vehicle. So whether that be proximity to public transit, a car sharing program with vehicles parked in your typical parking spot, but in the P1 level of the garage. You want to be able to afford the lifestyle that comes with the urban centers, but quickly get rid of the things that aren't as important. And I think across the board, what we're seeing the most is the car not really being of central importance to this buyer and this consumer at this point.
On the work side, where do you see work opportunities? For our audience, what advice do you have? Do you see careers and jobs that are going to rise in importance based on these trends?
I think that there's so much need for innovation in the real estate space because
Yes.
there's been a sameness for so long that's sold that it hasn't really forced the hand of developers to change, right? And that's a big benefit to the developer side because you can keep, it's a hamster wheel unless someone breaks the cycle. And there was this awakening during COVID where the result of the coming out of it was a new demand for, like we talked about, innovation, customization, personalization. But I think where the future lies has to do a lot with things like NFTs and how do we attach more technology, to a greater degree and kind of apply it to kind of an old tried and true way of doing things. So, we're talking to our developer clients right now about accepting cryptocurrency, for example. How do you perhaps automate all levels of the lifestyle experience? What if we had, virtual experiences with our concierge? And we could better and more differently define the amenity spaces. So to answer your question, if you're sitting there in second or third year looking to get into real estate, I would say it's about pushing the envelope and continuing to innovate and press even harder on these developers because there's certain things that won't change. The developer's primary role is going to be to find the real estate, but I think that at the end of the day, it's the consumer that's going to drive what they put up. So challenging design, challenging innovation, new ways to purchase product, the acceptance of currency, what kind of currency? Are we talking about only physical real estate, or are we talking about real estate in the meta world? All those things are now kind of showing themselves, and it's happening really quickly. So I would say concentrate on the technology and the outside of the box ideas that have a lot of room to grow in this space right now.